You are listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 20. Have you struggled with body image? Perhaps you have a love-hate relationship with food. Maybe you're feeling lost and you need help rediscovering yourself and what self-love means to you. Well, today's episode is for you, my friend. My guest is an expert on the topics of beauty, confidence, and self-love, and speaks from a place of experience because she too has struggled in these areas. So let's get comfy and ready to hear valuable insights from an amazing woman who is dedicated to helping women live from a place of self-love. You are listening to Love Unplugged, a podcast focused on love in all its forms. I'm your host, Jessica Frigon, hopeful romantic and founder of Project Love. I found that too often love is set aside or taken for granted, and we tend to forget how to care for ourselves and our important relationships in the day-to-day chaos. So let's slow down, tune in, and begin our journey of rediscovering love. From honest heart-to-heart conversations with real couples and knowledgeable guests to deep dive reviews of new products and services that will help you feel beautiful inside and out. If you're looking for relatable advice or wanting to be inspired by real-life love stories, you've come to the right place. Without further ado, let's get to it. Hello, everybody. Today I am joined by Erin Treloar, health coach and founder of Raw Beauty Co. and Raw Beauty Talks, a highly acclaimed podcast which shares unfiltered conversations about what beauty, health, and wellness look like in real life. Her passion is helping women become the healthiest versions of themselves, and she is exactly what we need in this social media and perfectly curated Instagram field world. So welcome, Erin. I am so honored to have you as my guest, and I'm so excited to learn all about your journey and passion for helping women. But before we start, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for to share a little bit about who you are.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and for that kind introduction. That was so sweet. Well, as you said, my name's Erin Treloar. Who am I? I am a mom of two beautiful little babes. My son's name is James. He's 4, and Brooklyn is 2. I am a wifey. My husband's name is Scott, and I'm the founder of a company called Raw Beauty Co. that is dedicated to helping women live from a place of self-love, to find confidence in the body that they've been given. And amidst this crazy world that we're living in right now of, constant stream of social media images and a culture that really puts a lot of weight on the way that we look. So I'm a health coach by trade, and I don't know, I wear a lot of different hats: podcaster, writer, all the things.
You do a lot.
I love it all so much, though. And, I saw a funny quote the other day. It was like that quote that we all hear: if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And the person had scratched out the second part and was like, if you love your work, you still work. I was like, oh, hallelujah. I love my work and I choose it every day that I come into the office, but I'm still working. I'm still in the hustle, and I'm just lucky that I enjoy what I do.
That's awesome. I totally agree with that. Just because you love what you do doesn't mean it's not hard work.
Totally. I know. We can't downplay that. You can't just sit around and wait for life to happen. There's a lot of effort and energy that goes into creating these dreams that we have for ourselves and to creating the life that we want, whether that's in regards to our career, our relationships, our family, our health and wellness. You got to work for it.
Yes, definitely. So I'd love to start with your experience as a teenager with self-love. What was the result of comparing yourself to another friend at such a young and vulnerable age?
So you're probably referring to my dance group that I was part of. I did a lot of dance when I was younger, and there was a girl in one of the classes who I just thought was the most beautiful person ever. She got signed with a modeling agency and was flying all over the world to these incredible places, making a ton of money as a teenager. And I, at a very young age, started to become aware of my body, and I was tall and thin just naturally. But I could not stack up to the images that I was seeing at the time in magazines like 17 and YM and Women's Health. My mom would never let us buy those magazines, but you still notice them at the store, and I would still get my hands on them every once in a while. And I just knew I didn't quite look like those girls in the magazines, which, I mean, it's been talked about time and time again. Nobody, even the girls in the magazines, look like those girls in the magazines. But I became really fixated on conforming my body to that ideal beauty standard. And in the process of eating healthier and exercising a little bit more to shave that tiny bit of whatever it was that was on my hips, it was crazy that I was even concerned about this at the age of 15. Mm-hmm. But somewhere in that process, I completely lost myself, and I got stuck in an eating disorder, which many people who don't understand it, think it's a choice that you're making. But at some point, your mind takes over. Your mind becomes sick, and it's like having a cold or a flu. It takes over your body. It takes over your thoughts. And I specifically remember reaching a certain weight and being like, I do not want to focus on calories anymore. I do not want to lose any more weight, but I couldn't stop. Like that voice that was constantly comparing myself to others, that was counting calories, that was obsessing over the way that I looked, just would not quiet down. I felt trapped in my own body and in my own mind. So I was really lucky to be admitted into a hospital program, which at the time was terrifying. It was awful. But it was really an opportunity for me to gain control back over my mind and my body, to start practicing some of these key pillars of self-love, and to build a foundation upon which I would continue this journey of self-development. And a lot of people don't get that opportunity until they're at a breaking point in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, I work with women now who are in their 60s who are finally able to deal with this stuff. So while it was really hard in the moment, I recognize now what a gift it was to go through that experience at such a young age.
How did your family become aware of what was going on with you? Like, did you talk to them about all these feelings that you were experiencing, or was it something that they noticed and then they kind of had to act on?
I think that at first, when I started saying, I'm not going to eat X, Y, and Z anymore, or I don't want my food cooked with blah, 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 and I'm not going to get into the specifics because it can be triggering for people who are struggling with this type of thing, that my mom was like, oh boy, okay, we're going through a phase, like how some kids want to be vegetarian. And so at first, I think that, both my parents thought that it was more about that. We come from a family that loves activity. My mom and dad would go for a run every Saturday morning with their friends. That would be their social time. They coached our soccer teams. So we were always very active. So when I wanted to go to the gym or like start running to dance classes, it wasn't a huge red flag at first because they thought it was just to kind of get better at what I was doing in an athletic way. Then I think that they started to notice this is getting a little bit out of control, the amount of control that she wants. And my mom approached me and I said, no, I'm fine. And there's nothing to worry about. Then my dance teachers approached them and were like, we're worried about Erin. At which point there was more conversation and I was still fully in denial. And then I remember we were going away skiing for spring break, and my mind was going crazy thinking about what would I eat up on the ski hill? There was going to be another family with us. Would they be judging when I didn't eat dinner? Or when I was so specific about what I had to eat. And I sat down with my mom and said, I do think there's something wrong. I'm so exhausted by all of these thoughts that I'm having, and I don't know how to make them stop. So at that point, I think she was incredibly relieved because at least there was an understanding that, okay, there is a problem here. And we started the process of trying to find a therapist, meeting with a dietitian. But it was just too strong. Like I kept losing weight until I was, Yeah, I won't even say it. I won't say it in case there's anyone listening who's there, but very, very sick. Very, very sick. Not sure if I was going to make it, kind of sick. And at that point, luckily, a spot opened in the hospital program. And so I was very resistant to going in. And it was actually my dad who was like, can you just go in for 1 week? Do it for me. Don't worry about doing it for yourself. Just do it for me. And I have a soft spot for my dad. I'm a daddy's girl. So that was kind of the push that I needed. I cried the whole first 2 days. It was like being thrown into a snake pit. If you think about like the thing that you fear most in life, whether that's a loved one dying or spiders or whatever it is, it was kind of like having to face your biggest fear, because that's what food becomes when you have an eating disorder.
Wow. I can only imagine. That's insane. I can't even imagine what that would feel like going into that situation, even though you know you have an issue that you need to deal with. That's just a lot to deal with altogether.
Yeah, it was a really intense time for our whole family, but we made it through. I mean, those situations can break a family or they can make a family. And I think it was really rocky for a long time because it was incredibly stressful for both of my parents, but my mom in particular, I think, wore a lot of the stress. And as women, we always, blame ourselves and wonder if we could have done more. And so it also was a time for her where she really had to dig into figuring out her own personal boundaries, how she was going to use self-care in that stage, how she was going to create some separation between the outcome of my life, no matter what that was, and herself. And so I acknowledge and praise her for doing the work right there alongside me. And I'm sure my dad was doing the work at some capacity too, but just at a different level.
That's amazing that you had that support.
It was.
So you welcomed a baby girl in 2017, I believe.
Yeah.
So in this social media crazy world where, there are a lot of more unedited photos coming up where it's showing, real body images and whatnot, but I think we still have a long way to go. How are you going to teach or guide her as she grows up about the misconstrued messages on beauty that are so abundant everywhere we look?
It's such a great question, and it is a hard one to answer because I don't even know by the time my kids are old enough to have phones what the social landscape will look like. I don't know, what we'll be up against, but I think that just being conscious of how I use technology and how much we bring it into their lives at this stage is all that I can do. I mean, so technically how that looks is for me having structures and boundaries to support me in not using my phone all the time around them. And so I turn all my notifications and the sound off on my phone as soon as I step in the door at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And I don't pick up my phone, rarely ever, never check social media between 5 and 8 p.m. or whenever it is that they're in bed. Now, we are addicted to our phones, like truly addicted. So putting your phone away and on silent isn't necessarily going to be enough for a lot of people to not check their phone. So, we have to put the systems and structures in place, whether that's removing it from our phone completely or keeping our phone at the front door or in a bag, in order to support us in showing up how we want to show up around our families. In regards to the messages that we receive as women, this is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, is that the most important work we can do as mothers and women is the work we do on ourselves, is changing the beliefs we have about ourselves, our own self-worth, what beauty and wellness and health means to us, how we intake, digest, and respond to media. And as we get better at doing that, as we become more conscious, aware, and awake, we teach our kids the same thing. And the messages that we pass along to them will be a lot different. If you are constantly weighing yourself in front of your kids, or talking negatively about a body part, or examining a body part in the mirror, they are picking up on all of that stuff. So, if that's the place that you're in right now, don't beat yourself up, because we live in a culture that perpetuates that pressure on us. So it's really about becoming conscious of the fact that you're doing it, and then deciding how it is you want to show up in your life and for your kids. So I don't weigh myself. My husband does sometimes, because he trains for triathlons and things. So I have had some very strict conversations with him, being like, our kids will not see you weighing yourself, because that, at the end of the day, the weight on the scale isn't what's important. What's important is that they are, in creating joyful, beautiful relationship with food and movement, and that will set the foundation for the rest of their life, and everything else will work out from there.
I love that, because children do pick up on everything. If they see you on your phone all the time, they're going to want to be on your phone as well. They're like little copycats.
Totally. Kind of, oh right? My gosh. Yes. If I have my phone out, I have 2 kids on my lap. They're like, what are you looking at? We want to see videos. And none of that is bad to a certain extent. But for me, it's way more important to be connected to them than the internet, to be connected to them than my phone. So it just, I have to put the systems in place as a mature adult to create what it is that I want in my life. And I want them more than my Instagram feed.
I totally agree with your approach to that. So I want to hear how you came to create Raw Beauty Co. and your podcast. How did you come up with the idea and then turn it into a reality?
Well, when I originally launched Raw, it looked a lot different than it does now. So when we originally started it, it was an interview series featuring women without makeup, photo editing, or filters. And we would just have a really real, raw conversation. And I typed all the interview responses up and published them on our blog. And this was kind of when Dove was doing this, but it was not like this whole conversation around beauty and media had not exploded yet. And so I just had a real craving after my experience to see images in media that would inspire me, that felt attainable, and that talked about real things. I'm not somebody who loves having a surface level conversation. So I wanted to know more about these women's fears, their joys, what they were passionate about, what they were scared about. And that's what we talked about. So that's how Raw launched, and it got the attention of a number of large companies. And so we did some awesome collaborations with companies like Kitten Ace and Lululemon and Dermalogica. And I've been on my own journey of figuring out how to take this passion project that I love and turn it into something that would be more sustainable. So about 3 years ago, I did my health coaching certification after having hundreds of conversations with women about how we were feeling in our body and about ourselves. And I reached a point where I was like, I cannot have another conversation with a woman who feels like crap about herself without having some tools to help her move forward from that space. And I just felt very called that this was the next step for Raw. So pushed pause on the interviews, did my health coaching certification, really dug into the tools and the work that had helped me step forward from the place that I was in. And I was able to create a program called The Shift, which is a group coaching program to help women overcome emotional eating and the battle with their body. And it is a 10-week program, and it runs, we have one that's starting on Sunday, and then we'll have another one that launches in January. And it is just my joy doing this work, getting to see women step into their strength and to uncover that innate truth that all of us are born with, that we are love. Because at the end of the day, It's as simple as that. When you're born a baby, you don't arrive into this world hating your thighs and worrying about cellulite and wondering if you're good enough to do X, Y, and Z. And when you're a toddler, you're not saying things and then wondering, oh my God, why did I say that? I should have kept my mouth closed, or I should have been quieter, or, that's so embarrassing. When you're a toddler, you move your body in ways that feels good. You put on clothes that feel right for you and that you really like. You eat foods that bring you joy. And somewhere along the way, all of these messages get mixed up. And my job at the end of the day is to help women come back to, as I said, that innate truth within them, to help them rediscover what brings them joy, what lights them up. And once we start to focus on that kind of thing, then everything in life flows from there. It's amazing to see sort of how people shift in all aspects of their life and what they start to attract into their life when they live from that place.
It must be so inspiring for you to see how things develop after helping your clients.
It is the best job. It truly is. It truly is the best job. And I'm always learning. I'm always curious and like digging for more information and new tools. And that's sort of where the idea for the podcast came up, was that I wanted to talk to women who had been through things in their life, as we all have, who had, dealt with a miscarriage or had body image struggles or had a business fail, and who had to then move forward from that place, and to hear, how did you get through it? How did you get through it? Because when we're going through these challenges in life, which we will all go through, it is part of life. And while it can feel crappy in the moment, it is truly a gift, because it's often where we find our strength. It's so important to have hope that you will get through it, and to be able to see other people who have gone through it. So the whole point behind the Raw Beauty Talks podcast is to provide listeners with the stories of women who have overcome. And then we also talk to health and wellness experts who are able to share advice, tips, tools as well. So everyone from dietitians to therapists to acupuncturists, the whole meal deal. So it's been such a learning process for me, and just so fun to start that up. As you know, to have these conversations is, you just learn so much from everyone.
Do you think that this passion for helping women and connecting with them and sharing their experiences and their stories also help you heal from your past?
100%. Absolutely. I'm on the journey right there with everybody else. Maybe there's parts of the journey that I've figured out and sort of feel more confident in. And then, this is the story of life, is like you figure out one thing and then it hands you something else to work on. And that is how we grow and change and evolve and deepen. So I think part of the challenge is just getting comfortable in that process, getting comfortable in the discomfort. And it is so much easier, I find, to do that when you have a community of women around you supporting you who are going through it in some capacity at the same time, which is kind of like why social media can be challenging, because we're seeing the highlight reel and it feels like we're the only one who's going through the struggle, which is, from my understanding and from all the conversations that I've had, the opposite of what is actually true. For the most part, people are, they're in a season of, I don't want to say struggle, but growth and deepening in some capacity. And the highlights are, dotted in between that.
I feel that when people know that they're not alone and people are experiencing similar struggles, maybe at varying levels or degrees, there's like comfort that they find in that, and it kind of helps them in their journey, feeling like, okay, there's other people here that are going through similar things. It's kind of like supporting a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah.
So I love that you've created a community where you're sharing those experiences and letting people know that these things are happening in life. It's part of everyday life and we're all experiencing it. We're all in the same boat together and we're all going to learn from each other on how we can get through it.
You got it. That's exactly what it's all about.
So I know that you've experienced some challenges in 2018 and it was quite a big year for you. So if you would like to share a little bit about kind of what that burnout was, how you came to a burnout and how you kind of got back to a healthy state. Like what was that pivoting moment that led you to being like, okay, I need to change now and I need to put actions in place to move into a different direction?
Oh, yeah. 2018 was one for the books. I had James, who was at the time 3, and Brooklyn, who was around 8 or 9 months when I started to have anxiety that I couldn't get under control. So I'm somebody who's struggled with anxiety on and off for almost as long as I can remember, but I'd gone for a good 5 years having very minimal anxiety. And when it would pop up, I had a system in place where it was like, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're not going to drink coffee. You're going to bed earlier, no alcohol, eating really uninflammatory foods, dealing with whatever it is that's going on. So if, I was stressed about a relationship or if I was overworking, whatever it was, really looking and digging into that. Anyways, I would go through this system that I have and the anxiety would go away. And this time, it was not going away. I was working 2 jobs because I love my work, not necessarily even because I had to, but because it is my passion and it lights me up. I had this new baby that I was quite determined to breastfeed. I mean, anyone who's had kids knows like the battle that we face in regards to breastfeeding or bottle feeding, and my body at around the 6 or 7 month mark, I start to get really tiny. It is like the baby is sucking the life out of me. I can't eat enough to keep the milk coming. And so it's just at this stressful point where, you haven't slept properly for 7 or 8 months. You're exerting a phenomenal amount of energy, nourishing your baby, working late into the night often so that I could spend time with them. And my anxiety was through the roof. I started having panic attacks. I started having really scary thoughts, again, similar to my eating disorder, that I didn't feel in control of, that I thought I had to leave my family. I thought that Scott and I were likely not going to work out, that he was going to leave me. I mean, it was awful. And the thoughts would start spiraling. And then I would go into a panic attack where I would be essentially dry heaving on the floor. It felt like the floor was caving out under me. My whole body felt like it was on fire. You can't breathe very well when you're going through it. And then after it would pass, I would just be so exhausted. Like it's like you've run a marathon. And so, you have a couple of them and you're like, okay, I've got to put some things in place. I'm going to step out of this job. I was working with my parents and running their Pilates studio in addition to the work I was doing with Raw. So I'll put that on the back burner for a second. And, I eventually got to the place where I could not get out of bed. I had to have meditation recordings on 24/7 to just try and keep those thoughts at bay because they would spiral me into another panic attack. I would come out of bed at 4 when the kids woke up from their nap and try and spend from 4 till 7 with them. And I would just be so exhausted afterwards that I would have to climb back into bed and essentially would just sleep. And that lasted for about 2 weeks. I had to go through a deepening in regards to my relationship with the concept of taking medication. So I was of the mindset that through meditation, eating properly, doing all the work that we talk about, that I could get myself out of this space. But it was very quickly becoming clear that none of that stuff was working. None of it was activating I was not getting better. I was getting worse. And at that point, I had 2 kids on the line, my marriage on the line, my health on the line. So I had to really soften into and walk through the fear I had over going on an anti-anxiety medication. And I think a lot of people experience that. The stigma around taking medication is absolutely there. The fear around it, the lack of conversation about it, which is why I want to talk about it right now. It is there, but there are times when it will save your life. There are times when you cannot do the work. You cannot eat the greens and take the vitamin and pull yourself out of that place, in which case, thank God we have the medication. So I, during that time, really had to change my mindset around it and deepen into the knowledge that it is another tool that allows us to do the work in some cases. And that while I think sometimes in Western medication, we are quick to give out medication and kind of Band-Aid solutions, that we are so lucky to have it there as well when we need it. I always encourage people to, if you're going to take the medication, to also look at the lifestyle that you're living and to do the self-work in addition to it, if you can. However, I also recognize that's a privilege to be able to go to yoga and to have time to meditate and have time to choose organic foods. So it really, really forced me to crack down and break down a belief system that I had created that actually wasn't functional and that wasn't going to serve my clients moving forward. Like, I have worked with a lot of people who take an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety, and it is 100% the right move for them in this time. It allows them to show up, to do the work, and there is nothing wrong with it. Like, who effing cares? If you have to take a little white pill once a day so that you can show up and enjoy your life, like, who cares? Some of the most successful people I know are in the same place. And, it's just for anyone out there who's listening right now, who's either taking something or feels that they're at the point that they might need to. I just want you to hear this and to know it is okay. Like, you are part of a club of wonderful people. You are not a failure. We are living in a world right now that demands so much from us at a higher capacity than ever before. And some of our sensitive little souls aren't cut out for this environment. So, cut yourself a break, cut yourself some slack, and do what you need to do in order to be able to live this life fully.
I love that. People definitely need that reminder that, sometimes all the tools that you do have are just not enough. And it's okay to take a prescription to help you continue that healing when needed.
Absolutely. And I'm not a doctor, so I'm not like prescribing this or pushing it by any means. I just want to, I feel like there's a real divide. You even hear that quote sometimes that it's like meditation over medication. And I feel like there's this divide between Eastern and Western medicine. And I think when medicine becomes the most effective, there will be a combination of the two mindsets, of the two belief systems, and that's when we'll really start to thrive. So all I'm saying is that I think we need to remain open to all options and really look at our own life circumstance.
Yeah. I think women sometimes really push themselves too hard, sometimes to their own detriment, trying to be superwoman, whether they're trying to advance in their careers, whether they're an entrepreneur, which comes along with a whole list of things that they're responsible for, and they're nurturing their relationships or their marriage, and then making sure that they take time for themselves to nourish their souls. But also when you add children on top of that, which is also a full-time job, like, how does somebody even keep up with all those demands? So how did you feel about your body telling you to slow down when you were going through that. Because when I was going through my burnout and my body was telling me, slow down, you can't keep up, this is going to end in a very bad situation. But my mind was like, let's go, let's go, let's go. I was so frustrated that I couldn't keep up physically.
Oh my gosh. I was so disappointed with myself. I felt like a total failure. I mean, one part I haven't talked about is that I was also launching our group course at this time. And so I had 15 incredible women who were signed up for this course, who had paid a lot of money to get my help. And I was halfway through having a total meltdown myself. And I had to cancel the course. I obviously refunded everybody their money. So not only did I feel personally like a failure, I felt like raw is never going to be sustainable for me. I'm never going to be able to make this work. I mean, it was a dark, dark time. And also, as I was feeling all this stuff, I'm like, nothing that I teach other women actually works, because I am feeling so crappy in this moment about myself. And so, you know what? Another blessing from that is, like, I understand. That was a year and a half ago. That was not that long ago. I understand and can feel in my body what women are going to when they come to me. Like, I was just there again and just had to climb out of that place again. So it's interesting because it has, as I said, like, it was a real deepening experience for me to go back to the drawing board, for me to put all the tools in place that I teach everybody else, and to start to move forward from that space. Now, there are a lot of women who are struggling with burnout and who are feeling like, you know, their days, they've just had the panic attack, or they've just stepped away from the office and they feel like they need to get it all figured out. And when you are in that space of burnout, what you truly need for a couple of weeks, and ideally longer if you can take it, is to just rest and recover. It is like you have had a super high fever or temperature for an extended amount of time. And if you had the flu, you would rest and relax. When you're experiencing burnout at that level, it's like you've got a raging fever, except for nobody can really see it. And we often still feel like we need to push forward from that place. But anyone who's had burnout knows, like, you reach that point and there's no pushing forward anymore. It's like, it's not really an option. But yeah, the self-talk comes into play, and that is an opportunity to practice self-compassion. It's frustrating because people want another solution, but it always comes back to giving yourself grace, taking care of yourself, living from a place of self-love, which I consider self-love not an emotion so much as it is a verb. It is actions that we take to honor ourselves. And I talk about the 3 C's of self-love. So curiosity, commitment to self, and self-compassion. So staying curious about what works for you in any given moment, staying curious about what makes you thrive. So if you're in a burnout situation, that is a great opportunity to get curious about what wasn't working in your life previously. If you are getting a cold every 3 weeks, okay, something's not quite working here. My body's sending me some signals and some symptoms that's letting me know that this current way of life, or how I'm washing my hands, like, it doesn't have to be these huge existential crisis questions, but something's not working. And so let's try and get this back on track by staying curious about what does work, and what kind of movement do I need this week for my body? Maybe I don't need to be going to the pump it up workout class. Maybe I need gentle walks with a friend. And then self-compassion is maintaining that voice of speech, like you would talk to a friend who is going through a similar situation. And I know this does not come automatically for a lot of women, especially when you're in one of these really challenging moments in life. It is very hard to remain compassionate towards yourself, but the practice is so valuable. The practice of just giving yourself grace, of speaking to yourself kindly, of stopping that cycle of negative self-talk and choosing something kinder. It does change the neural pathways of our brain, and it allows a shift in our whole vision of the world. And then commitment to self is showing up. And as you figure out what works for your body, and as you practice self-compassion, that you actually live that. So for me, I used to work late into the night. The kids would go down, and my husband and I are both entrepreneurs, so we would both be back on our computer and would work until 11 or 12 and then shut our computer and straight into bed. If I work more than one night a week right now, my anxiety is back almost immediately. It is not an option right now for me to do that. So I have to, again, put systems and structures in place. I have had to say no to a lot of opportunities. I decided to leave the clinic and my Pilates studio so that I could just focus on work, my health, and my family. And we actually decided to move from Vancouver up to Whistler, BC, which is this gorgeous mountain resort town surrounded by nature, so that we could just slow things down and really focus on what our values are as a family. And that was a hard decision to make. I've lived in the city my whole life, 34 years. And so these were not small decisions that we made in order to really reprioritize health and wellness, to really commit to self, to follow that third C of commitment to self. And I think that's why I have gone from in bed, unable to even get out of bed for more than 2 hours a day, to this place now where I have launched a podcast. The group program is back up and running. We're about to open our online store, and I do not open my computer most days after 5 p.m. I am, at yoga a lot of time, three days a week at lunch break. It's just a whole different scenario. I read novels again. I hadn't read a book in probably 7 years, but I loved reading when I was younger, and I love reading now. So yeah, it's just, there is so much more balance at this stage.
I love how you completely leaned into that change and did it for you and your family, because your children are probably learning so much from your example and seeing how you guys lead your lives, which is going to impact how they choose to lead their lives.
Thank you. I hope so. I mean, as parents, we just have to kind of focus on, it's such a battle of focusing on what you need as a parent, but also on what your kids need. And you never feel like you're quite hitting the mark. So I appreciate you saying that.
So you kind of deal a little bit with nutrition as well. So I kind of want to get into that with you, because there's more and more light being shed on gut health and the impact it has on your emotional, physical, and mental states. And I know I've experienced this myself because I have a very sensitive stomach. So when I eat things that throw my gut off, I'm depressed. I'm exhausted. My brain is so foggy. It's ridiculous. And I just can't get myself to move and do things that I need to get done. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's absolutely valid. I mean, research is coming out showing the connection between our gut and our brain it's truly there. If you have a gut that is unhealthy, that your brain is not going to be as healthy. You're not going to be functioning at your highest capacity. So I think I think we can't avoid that anymore. I think where people get so tripped up these days in regards to their nutrition is that everyone is so focused on what the experts are telling them that they should eat. So we read a health blog and it's like, kale is the veggie for this year, or cauliflower is the veggie for this year. And chickpeas, and everyone's going vegan. And what I would really encourage anyone who's listening to do is to stop listening to the experts for a second and to really tune inward and to listen to your own body. So our body is designed to help us thrive in life. And it is constantly sending us messages about what is working for you and what is not working for you. And so when you start to connect to your body and trust your own body again to tell you what is working for you and what is not working for you, then I think we can start to reach optimal health. So for me, when I eat kale, chickpeas, onion, my stomach is super bloated, very painful, and I get gassy. So it doesn't matter how many people are telling me that those things are healthy. It's not working for my body. I also know that certain foods like carbohydrates, for example, are very necessary in order for me to feel my best self. If I go a full day and I don't have any carbohydrates in the form of like breads, whole wheat breads, like muffins, I am the worst version of myself. And this isn't just some sugar addiction. It's what my body needs. So I think that one thing that we can do is to really start just tuning into and noticing and listening to our own body and identifying the foods that make us feel good and the foods that don't make us feel good, the foods that are making us foggy brained, that are keeping us awake late at night, that are making you bloated and gassy, foods that you eat and then half an hour later you feel like you need to take a massive nap. Those are all foods that aren't really fueling and energizing you in the way that is sustainable. So I think that if everyone was able to just focus on that for a minute, that we would take a huge leap forward in regards to health and wellness.
Totally agree. It's so important to listen to your body and be self-aware of what's going on with it so that you are giving it the nutrients and the nutrition that it needs.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I want to talk about your relationship. I have so many questions, but
yeah.
Being a successful entrepreneur, raising a family, having a husband, and having gone through everything that you have, how do you nurture your relationship? How do you keep it strong? What do you guys do to make sure that you take time together as a couple?
Oh, this is so important. And I think when you add kids to the mix of, a couple, especially Scott and I, who are both very driven in our own passions and interests as well, it is that much more important to really dedicate time to building your relationship as individuals. And there have been, months where this didn't happen as much for us, like when you have the newborn. And I found like having that newborn stage when you're just with the baby all the time. And I'm an extroverted introvert, so introverted at my core, but I do love going out and connecting with people sometimes. But at my core, I need to be and have some alone time to recharge. And when you have a toddler and a baby, you are not getting very much alone time at all. And I just felt like so touched out by the end of the day that I feel like I wasn't able to give my husband the attention that he needs. And there's probably some moms who are listening to this and are like, So I think in the last year after we moved out of that newborn stage, we've really made it a focus to turn off our phones, to touch base, to practice what Melissa Ambrosini calls crystal clear communication. So just really getting clear on how the other person is feeling, what they need support in, what's working, what's not working, and setting aside some time to just have fun together as well, to go for a hike or to go out for dinner or to have a hot tub at the end of the day, whatever it is, to just have that connection. And then as well, we also just make an effort to have sex. You can get so exhausted, I feel like, in these initial stages when you're working on so many things that you forget to create time for that physical connection. And we just feel so much better when in our routine we have carved that out. I'm not talking late night, long hours or anything like that, but just physically connecting with your partner. And that is something that we have to work for. It is not something that we always feel like doing and making happen, but we set that side apart and we kind of switch roles as to who's initiating it. And I actually think like that keeps a lot of fire in the relationship. And it is so good for your own health and wellness. So I don't know, it's kind of a win-win.
That's great advice.
I know it did, like, listen, it was not happening much in those first like year of after baby. So don't put pressure on yourself, but at the same time, like make and carve out that time for your partner, because when your relationship is strong, your family is strong, and your kids see that love and that respect that you have for one another. So I don't know, I'd say crystal clear communication, sex, and yeah, those are two tools I would give people.
That's amazing, because really the relationship is the foundation of the family. So you need to put a lot of emphasis on that to make sure that that's solid.
Exactly. And I feel that when we get busy, we sometimes let that slide. But remember, I always try and remember how important to me that relationship was. That relationship for me was something I sought out even more than my career or the family component. I've always wanted big love in my life. I've always wanted that person that I could connect with and deepen with. And so, I have to hold that sacred and put in the time and energy and practice love. Even on the days when it doesn't necessarily feel like it's there, you act in love, in the same way that you practice self-love. And all of that adds up and creates a beautiful marriage. We've been married for 5 years now, which probably doesn't seem like a long time to some people, but it's been 5 really amazing years.
So what tools, like books or meditation apps, things like that, aside from your coaching program, do you recommend to those needing to reconnect with themselves on all levels and then break from those unhealthy patterns?
I think meditation is so huge. I think it is one of the most powerful tools. You can do it from anywhere at any time. It doesn't matter if you travel or if you have kids. You can do a 2-minute meditation. You can do a 20-minute meditation. You can do a 2-hour meditation. So I feel like it is something that is accessible to everyone. There's tons of online options. You can download an app like Headspace or Calm. You can find free meditations on YouTube. We have a meditation for self-love package that we created with the incredible Michelle Cambolis that you can find at rawbeauty.co/shop. There are so many options for meditation, and it is an incredible practice for anybody who has an over anxious mind, anybody who's looking for more clarity or focus in life, anyone who's feeling overwhelmed. If you are experiencing things like digestive issues or inflammation in your body, it is beautiful for that. So I think meditation is hands down one of my favorite tools.
Awesome. So if anybody wants to learn more about you, your podcast, your coaching programs, where can they connect with you?
Just head on over to rawbeautytalks.com, or you can find us on Instagram at rawbeautytalks. And please send me a little DM after listening to this. Say hi, introduce yourself. I love to actually meet the people that are listening to these things and to have a chance to say hi, because I feel like social media sometimes can just be so isolating and lonely. I personally would way rather know a little bit about somebody rather than just seeing a like on a post that we have. So if any pieces from this resonated with you, I would love you to share your aha moment with me over on our Instagram page. Just shoot me a DM or comment in a post.
I love that, because even though it's social, it's not social.
It's not for me in a fueling way. So I would be so pumped to actually, get to hear from somebody who had heard this and hear, if anything sort of stood out to you, or if you have any thoughts or tools or advice, send them my way.
Awesome. I definitely recommend that everybody go and subscribe to her podcast. Every single episode is stock full of goodness. You're going to learn so much. You're going to be able to apply so much in your lives. I definitely binge it. So I definitely recommend it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you.
Well, thank you so much, Erin, for taking the time to share your journey, your passion, but as well giving us such valuable advice on rediscovering self-love. It was an absolute honor to be able to chat with you today. I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.